Do you or someone you know experience persistent or unrelenting feelings of depression? Perhaps these feelings go away for a few days. If you're lucky, maybe a few weeks, but then they always seem to return. Despite your best efforts, perhaps you've tried psychotherapy treatment or various types of medication, nothing really proves to be effective. If that's the case, there may be more here than meets the eye. And what I mean by that is, perhaps this isn't depression, but a narcissistic deflation. That's the question I'm asking all of you to open up to and think about today. Is this really depression, or is this perhaps a narcissistic deflation? Without the expertise of a trained professional in personality disorders, this kind of narcissistic deflation oftentimes goes undetected and therefore is not properly treated. I've observed in my own private practice with these individuals who have come to me after various treatment failures that through a collaborative effort, we slowly begin to see that there are many shameful experiences in their life. In my field, the field of psychoanalysis, this is what we call a shame state. Let me give you an example of this. A fellow comes in who's on a triple cocktail of various different types of antidepressant medication, and he comes in one day complaining that his depression is back. When I inquire about the depression, he typically, and this is not uncommon, has short answers such as I don't know, just woke up with it one day. But slowly, as I could begin to help him reconstruct precisely when his mood shifted, we began to realize that his partner was away on a business trip. He had anticipated constant communication with his partner through text messaging. But much to his dismay, when he didn't receive messages back, he became quite disheartened. First he was surprised, and then he became quite upset. These kinds of scenarios are not uncommon. Picture a woman who comes in very similar, complaining that she's been feeling very depressed, can't really quite put her finger on it. When I'm able to slow her down and again reconstruct what happened, it turns out that she had a date night planned with her husband, who then needed to stay late at work. She was really quite excited about this date night, and at the last minute he needed to cancel. These instances point to, again, what's oftentimes referred to in my field, the field of psychoanalysis, as shame states. Yes, what I'm suggesting to all of you is that it may not necessarily be depression, but it may be more of a shame state that leads to a narcissistic deflation. The shame oftentimes goes unnoticed, and what you may have picked up on in these few examples is that there's a level of excitement that precedes a feeling of shame. It's really this level of excitement that's coupled with a disappointment that becomes much larger, that leads to an incredible feeling of shame and then narcissistic injury. This fellow was excited about communicating with his partner, and then he described it as his phone dried up. In other words, there was nothing there. And conversely, this woman was excited about date night with her husband, and again, the same thing, excitement and intense disappointment. He wasn't there. Let me say this another way. Let's say something happens and you're really excited. You're sort of bursting with enthusiasm because you got some good news at work. You rush home to tell a loved one all about your good news, and you're met with a lackluster response. This, again, in my field, is what we call a misattunement. And these misattunements can become quite disappointing and shame-inducing if one does not have the capacity to regulate these shameful experiences. If you've never learned to regulate and master shame and humiliation, these experiences will come as a sudden shock and will deflate any sort of narcissistic affect that you had before. Again, this is a state in my field, what we call a narcissistic injury. But the good news is we have tools and techniques to deal with these pains of everyday life. The treatment approach that I offer, that I talk quite a bit about on the Narcissism Dakota, promotes long-lasting change. Why long-lasting? Because we are constantly talking about the underlying mechanisms that are at play here. such as this shock-induced deflation of self-esteem. The ultimate goal is to help you begin to develop a system that you can regulate your own emotions. If you or someone you know is grappling with these sorts of struggles, I'm here to support you. My expertise lies in helping you develop a robust system of what we call auto-regulation. In other words, self-regulation. We want to build up the biggest system possible so that when these slights of everyday life occur, they don't end up leaving you feeling so shameful or humiliated and then deflated. If you would like to hear more about my approach, you can contact me directly. Please feel free to shoot me an email. You could subscribe to the Narcissism Decoder, where I talk about various facets of narcissism, and yes, this is one of the facets of narcissism. Or if you're really enthusiastic and you want to do a deep dive into this, I would encourage you to check out my podcast, where I go into far more detail about these different aspects of narcissism. But look, invariably, this stuff is quite complicated. So if I said anything that confused you today, as always, please feel free to reach out, shoot me an email, and I'll do my best to respond to you directly, or I'll pick it up in a subsequent video. Okay, we have to stop there for today. Until next time, bye for now.